So I want you to just take a second and
Yeah.
picture the wealthiest, most glamorous city in all of ancient history.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah, like try to visualize a place that is completely synonymous with fabulous treasures, gold, jewels, and just absolute unchecked opulence.
Right.
I'm talking hanging gardens, massive towers touching the sky, and markets overflowing with exotic goods. You have that image in your
I
head.
do, yeah. Very cinematic.
Good. So now take that gleaming, wealthy metropolis and just drop it squarely into a flat, arid, sun-baked wasteland with absolutely zero natural resources.
Oh, wow.
I mean, literally nothing. No forests to cut for timber, no mountains to mine for silver or iron, not even a single stone quarry to get rocks for building.
It sounds like a complete paradox when you frame it that way.
Right.
Because we're incredibly conditioned to associate massive wealth with a surplus of natural geographical advantages.
Exactly.
You just assume a rich empire must be sitting at a gold mine or at least a, massive natural harbor or something.
Right. But the thing is, this isn't some hypothetical thought experiment. We're talking about Babylon.
Yes.
So the tension we are exploring today on this deep dive is this. How in the world does a civilization with literally nothing but dirt and a single river become the richest, most legendary empire of the ancient world?
It's a great question.
That is the question at the heart of our deep dive today. We're exploring the historical sketch that basically sets the stage for our source material, the book The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah, that first chapter is so crucial.
It really is. So the mission today is to uncover the blueprint for how this city created something unimaginable out of absolutely nothing.
And this historical foundation isn't just for archaeologists,
Right.
For anyone listening who is interested in business, entrepreneurship, or simply taking control of their personal finances, this chapter proves a really critical point.
Which is?
That true wealth is almost never just handed to you by geography or by birthright or by luck.
Yeah, it's not an accident.
Exactly. It is entirely man-made. It is built at a foundation of unyielding systems, infrastructure, and just relentless human ingenuity.
So let's start by totally dismantling this myth of natural resources. Set the scene for us. What were the actual physical conditions the Babylonians were dealing with?
Well, the geography of Babylon was brutal. I mean, it was located beside the Euphrates River, sure, but in a valley that was essentially a flat, arid waste.
Okay.
To give you a visceral modern comparison, the latitude and climate are practically identical to Yuma, Arizona.
Oh, wow. So just hot.
Blisteringly hot, incredibly dry, and it receives completely insufficient rainfall to raise any kind of sustaining crops.
So just to reiterate, no timber, no stone, no metal. They had exactly two assets, basically. They had dirt, fertile dirt, sure, but still just dirt. And they had the water flowing in the river. That's it.
That is literally it.
So every single ounce of their immense wealth had to be engineered. It immediately makes me think of a modern startup bootstrapping its way out of a garage.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, like we love those stories of founders starting with just a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. But even those founders have a basic infrastructure to lean on, right?
Right, they're not building the internet from scratch.
Exactly. They have the internet, they have electricity, they have venture capital ecosystems. The Babylonians didn't even have rocks.
No rocks at all.
So I have to stop here because I don't understand how you build a world wonder or even just a functional city without stone.
Yeah.
If you build a towering city out of mud, doesn't it just dissolve the first time it actually rains or the river floods?
Well, that is the exact problem they faced. And what's fascinating here is their solution literally changed human history.
Okay.
They didn't sit around lamenting the lack of stone. They looked at the dirt, they looked at the blistering sun, and they weaponized their environment.
What do you mean weaponized?
They took the clay from the earth and formed it into bricks.
Oh.
But they realized, just as you pointed out, that sun-dried mud isn't going to hold up an empire.
Right, it would just wash away.
Exactly. So they invented massive kilns to bake the clay.
So they chemically altered the dirt.
They did. By subjecting the molded mud to intense, sustained fire, they transformed soft earth into hard, durable ceramic.
Wow.
They literally baked a towering empire into existence, brick by brick.
That is wild to think about.
It is. When you think about the sheer volume of human labor required to dig the clay, mold the bricks, gather whatever brush or fuel they could find for the kilns in a desert.
Yeah, where do you get fuel in a desert?
Just scrub brush, whatever they could find, and then firing millions upon millions of bricks. It is staggering.
I can't even imagine the scale.
Babylon is arguably history's greatest example of man's ability to achieve massive objectives using whatever severely limited means are at their disposal.
It's the ultimate lesson in raw resourcefulness, I think.
Absolutely.
In modern business, or even just in our personal lives, it is so incredibly easy to fall into the trap of a scarcity mindset.
Oh, all the time.
We say, if only I had more venture capital, or if I had been born into a better network.
Or if my marketing budget was bigger, then I could finally succeed.
Right. But the Babylonians completely invalidate that excuse. Resourcefulness is infinitely more valuable than resources.
That's exactly it.
You don't sit around complaining about the capital you lack. You look at the dirt and the water you actually have, and you figure out how to build a kiln.
That's such a good way to put it. But, building the bricks was really just step one.
Okay.
Because having a brick house in a starving desert doesn't make you an empire. You still have to eat.
Fair point.
This brings us to the original inhabitants of the region, the Sumerites. According to the written historical record, these were the very first engineers.
This is where we need to talk logistics, right? Because you have the river and you have this potentially fertile dirt, but the dirt is baked dry by that Yuma-level sun.
Right.
The water is useless if it just flows straight down the riverbed past the dry dirt. You have to connect them.
Yes. And the scale at which they connected them is difficult to comprehend even today. So Babylonian engineers diverted the waters from the Euphrates using a complex network of dams and immense irrigation canals.
Okay.
They drove these canals far out across that arid valley, basically defying the natural landscape, to pour life-giving water over the dry soil.
The sources actually mention the physical size of these canals, and I genuinely had a hard time wrapping my head around it.
They were massive.
Yeah, the text says some were so massive that when the water was drained, a dozen horses could ride abreast along the bottom.
12 horses.
12 horses wide. That is not a ditch you dig over a weekend.
No, not at all.
That is a massive generational public works project. How on earth do you excavate something like that without modern machinery?
It's crazy to think about.
Because they didn't have steel excavators or dynamite.
They didn't even have iron tools at the very beginning.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they used tools made of bronze, stone, and even bone.
Bone, wow.
Yeah, and they used woven baskets to carry the earth away.
Just baskets. That is mind-blowing.
The mechanism here was pure, organized human willpower. Thousands of laborers working over decades, systematically reshaping the earth.
Wow.
And they didn't just dig canals either. They engineered elaborate drainage systems to reclaim vast, unlivable swamplands at the mouths of Euphrates and Tigris rivers.
So they were draining the swamps, too.
Exactly. Systematically draining the water to put that incredibly rich soil under cultivation as well.
I look at that, and instead of comparing it to modern tech infrastructure like, fiber optic cables, it actually reminds me more of biology.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it's like they were building the circulatory system for a living organism.
I like that.
The river is the heart, and they had to carve out these massive arteries and then smaller veins to pump life-giving blood to every single extremity of the desert.
Right.
Because if you don't build the arteries, the tissue just dies.
That biological analogy is spot on. And once that circulatory system was functioning, the desert bloomed in a way the ancient world had never seen before. The harvests of wheat and barley were just unprecedented. The Greek historian Herodotus actually visited Babylon in its prime, and his historical writings marvel at the shocking fertility of the soil.
That's so cool that we have those accounts.
It is, and the crucial thing to understand here is that this wealth wasn't an accident. It wasn't just a lucky decade of good rain.
Right.
It was the direct, predictable result of heavily front-loading their effort into infrastructure.
And the practical takeaway here is so clear. Before you can harvest massive returns, whether that's scaling a business, building a team, or growing an investment portfolio.
You have to lay the groundwork.
Exactly. You must invest heavily in the foundational systems that can actually handle the flow of opportunity.
Yes.
You can't just throw a million seeds onto dry dirt and pray for rain. You have to endure the grueling, unglamorous work of digging the canal first.
Digging it with baskets and bone tools.
Right. Only then can you expect the water to flow.
So let's follow that progression a bit. The canals are dug, the water flows, the unprecedented harvests come in. But extreme abundance introduces a completely new problem.
Which is?
Well, how do you manage, track, and trade 1 million bushels of wheat without the entire system collapsing into chaos.
Ah, I see. You have to invent an entirely new system of management.
Exactly, which is where Babylon's contributions shift from physical engineering to intellectual engineering.
Okay, I love this part.
They weren't just the first hydraulic engineers. They were the first astronomers, the first mathematicians, and most importantly for our understanding of wealth, they were the first true financiers.
They basically invented the concept of fintech.
Yeah, you could say that.
Before there was tech, they invented the financial structures we still use today.
They are credited as the original inventors of money as a medium of exchange.
Wow!
Because before them, commerce was largely barter.
Right, like I'll give you a sheep for some shoes.
Exactly. But they invented promissory notes, the concept of interest, and written titles to property.
That is wild to think about.
But remember our earlier constraint, no trees.
Right, no trees, so no paper.
No paper. So how do you record a complex financial contract without paper?
Use the mud.
They recorded everything on the exact same material they used to build their city, clay.
I want to spend some time on these clay tablets because the mechanics of this are just incredible to me.
It's fascinating.
For anyone who hasn't been in a history class in a while, they used a writing system called cuneiform, right?
That's right, cuneiform.
Can you give us like an ELI 5 on how that actually works in practice?
Sure. So imagine a tablet of pure, wet mud, maybe 6 by 8 inches and about an inch thick.
Okay.
You take a specialized reed, cut it at a specific angle, and you literally stamp or press wedge-shaped marks into the wet clay.
So you're not like scratching it in, you're pressing it.
Right, pressing. Each configuration of wedges represents a word or a number.
Got it.
And then once the contract is written, you take that wet tablet and you put it in the kiln. You bake it until it is rock solid.
The sources actually mention a very specific tablet recovered by modern archaeologists.
Oh yeah, the storekeeper one.
Yeah, it belonged to an ancient country storekeeper. It is a meticulous record of a customer bringing in a single cow and exchanging it for 7 sacks of wheat.
Just a totally normal daily transaction.
Right, but what's crazy is 3 of those sacks were delivered right then and there, and the other 4 were held in the store's inventory, waiting to be picked up at the customer's convenience.
It is a legally binding, recorded credit transaction from thousands of years ago.
It's the ancient equivalent of the blockchain.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
It is a completely immutable, hard-coded ledger of commerce. Once that clay is baked, you can't just sneak in with an eraser, change a number, and forge the books.
No, you definitely can't.
It's locked in stone, or rather locked in baked mud, forever.
The immutability is vital, but let's look deeper into the psychology of that medium.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, think about the sheer friction of this process compared to how we handle money today.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Today, spending is entirely frictionless. You tap a piece of plastic against a glass screen or double-click a button on your phone, and money moves invisibly and instantly across the globe.
I can accidentally spend $500 while half asleep on my couch just by looking at my phone's Face ID.
Exactly.
There is zero physical resistance.
Now, contrast that with Babylon. To make a transaction, you have to go dig up the right kind of clay.
Okay.
You have to purify it, mold it into a uniform tablet, sit down with a scribe, meticulously carve your debts, your assets, and your promises into the mud.
And then you have to fire it.
Right. Then you bake it in a raging fire for hours.
Yeah.
The medium itself is highly laborious.
So it takes effort just to record the transaction.
Yes. And what that means psychologically is that every single transaction, every debt taken on, every transfer of wealth was deeply, profoundly intentional.
Wow.
You didn't casually mint a clay tablet on an impulse buy.
That friction totally forces financial discipline.
It does.
Because if I had to go dig up mud and bake a receipt in my oven for 6 hours every time I wanted to buy something, I would be incredibly mindful of where every single dollar went.
And by meticulously recording everything with such high friction and high intentionality, they created something even more valuable than the wheat itself.
What's that?
An environment of supreme financial trust.
That makes total sense because if you can't trust the ledger, the entire economy breaks down.
Exactly.
People won't trade if they think they're going to get cheated. So the takeaway here is the absolute power of immutable records.
Yes, document everything.
Document everything. Having clear accounting, writing down your agreements, maintaining a budget. These aren't just annoying administrative chores.
No, they're foundational.
They are mandatory, non-negotiable tools for protecting and growing wealth. If the Babylonians could take the physical time to literally bake their receipts in a kiln,
Yeah.
I think we can all take 5 minutes on a Sunday to update our budget spreadsheets.
I think so too. And, the internal systems of trust and accounting were perfect.
Yeah.
But as you build this oasis of extreme, unprecedented opulence in the middle of a brutal, starving desert,
Hmm.
you create a massive external problem.
Oh, I see where this is going. You paint a giant target on your back.
A huge target.
Every neighboring warlord, every hungry empire, every migrating army is going to look at Babylon and think, why are we scratching a living in the dust when we could just march in there and take their wheat, their gold, and their jewels?
Exactly. It's human nature.
How did they not get robbed blind on a weekly basis?
Well, they engineered their way out of that problem, too.
Of course they did.
They built the legendary walls of Babylon.
Okay, let's talk about the walls.
Queen Semiramis is credited with the early defensive structures, but it was King Nabopolassar and his son, Nebuchadnezzar, who built the later walls that became the stuff of myth.
Oh, okay.
And the sheer scale of these defenses, it defies logic for the ancient world.
Let's look at the numbers from the sources because this is crazy.
Yeah.
The estimates place these walls at about 160 feet high. I did the math on that. That is the equivalent of a 15-story modern office building.
That's insane.
A solid wall, 15 stories straight up into the desert sky.
And they didn't just build a tall fence, These walls stretched for an estimated 9 to 11 miles, encircling the entire sprawling metropolis.
Wow.
The engineering of the wall itself is fascinating. The top of the wall was so incredibly wide that a 6-horse chariot could be driven around the perimeter.
6-horse chariot just driving on top of the wall.
Yeah, that's how thick it was. It was faced with those same burnt bricks on the outside, and then further protected by a massive, deep moat of water drawn from the Euphrates.
Jeez.
The ancients ranked these walls right up there with the Great Pyramid of Egypt as a wonder of the world.
Think about the psychological impact of that on an invading army.
Oh, it would be demoralizing.
You march for weeks across a flat, burning desert expecting to sack a city, and you are suddenly confronted by a 15-story sheer cliff of baked ceramic surrounded by a moat.
You just want to turn around and go home.
Right. But this brings up an interesting philosophical point about their leadership.
What's that?
Well, if you have the engineering capability to build 15-story walls and the wealth to sustain massive armies, why didn't Babylon just conquer the rest of the world?
That is a really crucial distinction in the Babylonian mindset.
Okay.
Babylon existed for thousands of years, and the text explicitly notes that it was mostly ruled by lines of kings to whom conquest and plunder were merely incidental.
Interesting.
The outstanding rulers of Babylon, the ones who live on in history, they were remembered for their wisdom, their enterprise, and their justice.
So they weren't conquerors.
No, they were not, as the source material points out, quote-unquote, strutting monarchs who sought to conquer the known world simply to feed their own egos.
So their wars were almost entirely defensive.
Basically, yeah.
They weren't looking to project power across the globe. They just wanted to protect the economic machine they had built at home.
Exactly.
It perfectly mirrors Warren Buffett's concept of economic moats.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Buffett constantly talks about finding businesses that have a wide, sustainable moat around them, whether that's brand loyalty, a technological edge, or regulatory capture, basically to protect their competitive advantage from invaders.
Like from competitors.
But Babylon didn't just have a metaphorical economic moat. They built a literal 160-foot-high, 11-mile-long physical moat.
And the philosophy is identical. Building wealth is truly only half the equation.
Right.
Defending it, insulating it against risk and aggressive competitors is the other half.
That makes total sense.
It is incredibly common in business history to see a wildly successful company become intoxicated by its own wealth.
Oh, we see it all the time.
Right. They get bored with their core product.
Yeah.
Their CEO's ego inflates.
Yeah.
And they begin aggressive, unnecessary expansion.
They want to conquer the world.
Exactly. They stretch their supply lines, they lose focus, and eventually they collapse under their own weight.
Wow.
But Babylon's greatest kings avoided that trap. They poured their massive resources back into fortifying their own assets.
Which makes the climax of this historical sketch so baffling and honestly incredibly tragic.
It really is tragic.
Because the system worked perfectly for centuries. Historians talk about massive invading forces. We're talking 10,000 horsemen and 25,000 chariots throwing themselves against these walls and breaking like water against a rock.
The walls held.
But eventually, Babylon falls.
It did. The city finally fell to Cyrus the Great of Persia in 540 BC.
Wait, I have to stop you. How does a 15-story wall fall?
Well,
Were they starved out? Did the Persians invent some massive siege engine that shattered the baked bricks?
neither.
Either.
The walls were never breached.
What do you mean they were never breached?
The physical defenses performed flawlessly. Cyrus fully intended to attack the impregnable walls, which his own generals likely viewed as a monumental, perhaps impossible suicide mission.
Right, it's 15 stories of brick.
But he never had to lay siege to the city. The advisors to the Babylonian king at the time, Nabonidus, persuaded him to leave the absolute safety of the city and march his army out to meet Cyrus in open, pitched battle on the plains.
I am genuinely confused by this.
It's hard to understand.
Why in the world would a king abandon the greatest defensive structure in human history?
Yeah?
That makes zero tactical sense. You have a 15-story advantage, and you just open the front door and walk outside to fight a conqueror on a flat field.
It's baffling.
Was it terrible military intelligence? Was it hubris? What was it?
It was a fatal combination of complex political pressure and unchecked hubris.
Okay, unpack that.
We have to look at the mechanisms of leadership failure here. By the time of Nabonidus, the internal politics of Babylon had become fractured.
Okay.
There were religious disputes between the priesthood and the throne. Nabonidus was facing immense pressure to prove his legitimacy and his strength.
Ah, so he was insecure.
Yes. The advisors whispering in his ear likely convinced him that hiding behind a wall made him look weak to his restless populace.
Wow.
They played to his ego. They convinced him that a true, powerful king crushes his enemies in the open field rather than waiting out a boring, multi-year siege.
So his ego overrode centuries of proven military doctrine.
Precisely. He allowed internal political anxiety and personal pride to disconnect him from the foundational strategy of his empire.
That is just, wow.
He abandoned his ultimate competitive advantage to fight an enemy who was highly specialized in open-field cavalry warfare.
So he played into their hands.
It was the worst possible matchup. Nabonidus fought Cyrus in the open. He was decisively routed, the Babylonian army completely shattered and fled, and Cyrus the Great marched his forces through the open, undefended gates of Babylon without a single brick being knocked out of place.
That is mind-blowing. The greatest city in the world wasn't destroyed by a superior technology. It was destroyed by bad advice and human ego.
Exactly. The human element failed.
The practical takeaway here is glaringly obvious, whether you are running a company or managing your career.
Yes.
Never abandon your core strengths to fight a competitor on their terms.
Never.
If your advantage is an impregnable defense, stay behind your walls.
Stay inside.
Stick to the unglamorous defensive strategies that made you successful in the first place. Don't let someone goad you into a flashy, high-risk battle just to stroke your own ego.
The tragedy of Nabonidus is the ultimate historical warning about human error overriding perfect systems.
Yeah.
And that singular failure leads us directly to the reality of Babylon today.
Which is what?
Well, when the Persian Empire took over, the capital was eventually moved. The energizing human forces, the engineers, the financiers, the relentless maintenance of the canals, they were withdrawn.
Oh, because the people left.
Right. And without human ingenuity constantly pushing back against the desert, nature reclaimed its territory.
So if I were to book a flight today and go visit the physical site of Babylon, what am I actually looking at?
You'd be looking at a windswept, arid waste.
Really? Just nothing.
It is just earthen hills, desert shrubs, and blowing sand. The river has shifted its course over the millennia. The canals are entirely filled with dirt.
It went right back to being a heap of dirt.
Back to the mud it came from.
The 15-story walls, the hanging gardens, the fabulous gold, the bustling markets, the physical wealth is completely, entirely gone.
Yeah.
It's just dust scattered by the desert winds.
The physical wealth is gone, yes. But here is the synthesis of this entire historical sketch.
Okay.
The true wealth of Babylon was never actually the gold itself or the jewels or even the baked bricks.
Then what was it?
The true wealth was the wisdom. It was the mental models, the systems, the laws, the engineering mindset, and the financial principles they invented to conjure that gold out of the dirt in the first place.
That right there is the soul of this deep dive.
I think so.
The physical city crumbled into nothing, but the rules of money they discovered are immortal.
And they really are.
The systems they etched into those clay tablets didn't erode in the desert sand. Money is governed today by the exact same laws that controlled it when prosperous merchants thronged the streets of Babylon 6,000 years ago.
The principles of saving a portion of what you earn, investing it wisely, protecting your principal from risk, leveraging infrastructure, and maintaining meticulous records.
Yeah.
Those concepts were passed down. They were translated from cuneiform to Greek to Latin to English, and they literally run the global economy right now, this very second.
It really reframes how you look at the money sitting in your bank account, doesn't it?
It really does.
We are operating on an ancient operating system.
Yes, a very old, very effective operating system.
This has been an incredible macro bird's eye view of how the city was built.
It's a great foundation for the rest of the book.
It is. But next time, we're going to leave this high-level historical view and zoom all the way down into those dusty streets.
We're getting to the characters.
Yeah, we're going to meet a humble, discouraged chariot builder who is sitting on a wall, exhausted, looking up at all this dazzling wealth of Babylon around him and asking the exact same question we've all asked ourselves at some point.
And what's that?
Why can't I have some of that?
That is the universal question. And as we prepare to answer his question in the next chapter, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to consider.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Babylonians literally baked their business records into solid clay so they would last forever. And because of that high-friction process, we know exactly how intentionally they traded, saved, and built their empire.
Right.
If future archaeologists were to dig up the clay tablets of your life, your bank statements, your budget apps, your business systems, thousands of years from now, what story would they tell about how intentionally you managed your wealth? What happens when you do everything right? You work hard your entire life. You completely master your craft. You become the absolute best in your field, but you still wake up flat broke.
Yeah, it feels like a fundamental betrayal of, I don't know, the social contract, right?
Right.
You follow the blueprint you were handed, you pour your physical and mental energy into a skill, and yet the promised reward just never actually arrives.
I think that's an experience that resonates with a terrifying number of people today.
Mm-hmm.
We are fed this very linear narrative from kindergarten, put in the sweat, be a good worker, and you will get the gold. But you shared a piece of source material with me for today's deep dive that completely dismantles that promise. We're looking at a parable called The Man Who Desired Gold.
Yes.
It's the second chapter from the classic wealth-building book, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah.
And reading through it, I was struck by how it almost feels like a painful mirror being held up to the modern gig economy, even though it's set thousands of years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the setting is ancient, but the mechanics of the failure are timeless. The author, George S. Clason, uses this chapter to expose the dangerous, often entirely hidden gap between being a master technician of a trade and being a master of wealth generation.
Yeah.
They are treated by society as the same thing, but structurally, they are entirely different disciplines.
Entirely different.
Right.
So to set the stage for the listener, we are dropped right into the middle of the wealthiest city in the ancient world, Babylon.
Right.
There are the Hanging Gardens, the Temple of Bel, massive merchant networks, and immense riches everywhere you look. It's just booming.
It's the center of the world at that time.
Exactly. And sitting in the middle of all this macroeconomic booming wealth is our main character, Bansir. He's a masterful chariot builder, and his best friend, Kobe, is a highly talented musician. And both of these guys have completely empty pockets.
Well, the contrast there is very deliberate. Clason places them in Babylon specifically because Babylon, well, it had no natural resources to speak of, no forests, no mines.
Wait, really? No mines at all?
No, nothing like that. All of its staggering wealth was man-made, built entirely by engineering, irrigation, and financial ingenuity.
Oh, wow.
It was a city of systems. Yet Bansir and Kobe, standing in the middle of this man-made abundance, they're as poor as the king's slaves. They are surrounded by wealth, but totally disconnected from the mechanism of it.
I have a hard time reconciling that initially. I mean, if you are the best chariot builder in the richest city on earth, how do you not have any money?
It's a paradox, right?
Yeah, it really is. The scene opens with Bansir sitting on the low wall surrounding his property. He's thoroughly discouraged. The sun is beating down. His wife keeps looking out the door, basically communicating that, the meal bag is empty.
Yeah, the silent pressure.
Right, the silent pressure. And he has this partially finished chariot just sitting there in his workshop. He's completely ignoring it. Then Kobe, his musician friend, walks up and asks for a favor. He wants to borrow 2 humble shekels for a nobleman's feast that night.
2 shekels is a trifle. It's the ancient equivalent of asking a friend to spot you for a cup of coffee.
And Bansir looks at him and says he doesn't have it. Worse, he admits that if he did have 2 shekels, it would be his entire fortune. And no one lends out their entire fortune, not even to their best friend.
Yeah, that exchange right there, that is the pivot point of the whole chapter. The text makes it incredibly clear that these are not lazy men. From early dawn until darkness, Bansir has labored to build the finest chariots any man could make. He is highly skilled. Kabi is a highly skilled lyre player.
Right, they aren't slouching.
Exactly. The disconnect here is between their physical energy expenditure and their financial output.
I was reading this and I immediately thought of a video game skill tree.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
You know when you play a role-playing game and you get a finite amount of points to level up your character? Basir put 100% of his points into the chariot building skill and 0 points into the wealth building skill. He just assumed that mastering the first would automatically unlock the second.
That analogy gets right to the core of the mechanical failure here. He assumed the two skills were linked. But let's look at the mathematics of trading time for money, which is what Bansir is doing.
Okay, let's break that down.
When you are a laborer, even a highly skilled artisan laborer, your income is strictly bound by your physical capacity and time.
Right.
There are only so many hours in the sun to build a chariot. There is only so much physical energy Bansir can expend before his back gives out. If your revenue model requires your physical presence and active labor to generate a dollar, your wealth is mathematically capped by your biology.
Man, capped by your biology. That's a heavy realization. But wait, society conditions us to believe that if we just push past that biological limit, if we just hustle harder, wake up earlier, work longer into the night, the financial rewards will take care of themselves.
Yeah, the whole grind culture thing.
Exactly. Bansir even says he was soft-heartedly hoping someday the gods would recognize my worthy deeds and bestow upon me great prosperity.
Which is a very functional narrative for a society that needs laborers to keep the gears turning. But the gods of finance are entirely indifferent to his chariot-building skills.
They don't care how nice the wood is.
Not at all. Bansir is expecting his labor to do the work of a financial strategy. Now, mastering your daily job is essential for generating a baseline income. You need seed capital. But it cannot be a substitute for a system that separates your time from your earnings.
So he is confusing being busy with building wealth.
Precisely. And this isn't just an ancient problem. Think of the modern equivalent.
Like freelancers.
Yeah, the brilliant freelance graphic designer, the top-tier coder, or even a highly specialized surgeon. They might command a high hourly rate, but if they stop designing, coding, or cutting, the money stops flowing completely.
Oh, wow. Yeah, if the surgeon's hands shake, it's over.
Right. They are high income, but they are not necessarily wealthy. They haven't built an engine. They are the engine.
They are the engine. Which brings us to a massive psychological breaking point for Bansir. He hasn't just realized he's broke, he's just woken up from a dream. He describes this dream to Kabi, where he was a man of immense means. He had a handsome purse heavy with coins. He was tossing shekels to beggars, buying finery for his wife, buying whatever he desired for himself.
Living large.
Yeah. But the most striking detail he mentions isn't the stuff, it's the feeling he had in the dream. He says he felt a glorious sense of contentment. He felt assured of the future and unafraid.
And that's it right there. The true luxury of wealth is the absence of fear.
That stood out to me so much. The emotional toll of constant financial insecurity is an incredibly heavy weight. Waking up from that dream, from that temporary feeling of absolute security to the harsh reality of an empty purse, it fills Bansir with this overwhelming sense of rebellion. He is angry.
Well, the contrast he observes in his waking life fuels that anger. While he and Kabi are sitting there, they hear the bell of the king's water bearers.
Oh yeah, this part was brutal.
It is. They watch a long column of half-naked, sweating men plodding up the narrow street from the river, carrying heavy goatskins of water to sustain the hanging gardens. Day after day, year after year, just a relentless grind.
Bansir looks at them and says, "Pity the poor brutes." He pities them because they are slaves.
But Kabi responds with a devastating realization. He says, "Pity them I do, yet thou dost make me see how little better off are we, free men though we call ourselves."
It's a massive gut punch.
Yeah.
Bansir realizes that his so-called freedom is just the freedom to choose which wall he stares at while he worries about starving. They are banqueting on sour goat's milk and porridge while living in the wealthiest zip code on earth.
He recognizes that he is on a treadmill. And what's fascinating here is recognizing your own financial reality, no matter how grim it is the necessary catalyst for change. Frustration is kinetic energy.
Right.
If Bansir had just felt a little bit sad, he might have gone back to his shop and hammered on that chariot for another 12 hours out of sheer panic, hoping to squeeze out a few more coins.
Just cranking the treadmill up to a higher speed.
Precisely, just spinning the wheels faster. But the rebellion against his empty purse forces him to stop. He sits on the wall. He lets the frustration drive a structural change in his perspective. rather than just channeling it into more mindless labor. Working harder on a flawed system just makes you a more efficient gear in someone else's machine.
So he questions the fundamental rules of the game. He stops asking, how can I build this chariot faster?
Yeah.
And starts asking, why am I doing this at all if it yields nothing?
Right.
And Kabi, listening to this existential crisis, has a realization of his own. He points out that they strove to become a skillful lyre player and a staunch chariot builder. And at those specific pursuits, they succeeded. They achieved exactly what they set out to achieve.
Yeah, they hit their goals.
Exactly. And then Kabi says, the gods were content to let us continue thus.
The gods were content to let us continue thus. That line carries the weight of the entire chapter. It highlights the principle of deliberate intent. The universe doesn't give you what you deserve, it gives you what you optimize for.
I look at that and see the total absurdity of expecting a result you never actually planned for. Here's where it gets really interesting. You don't accidentally bake a cake when you're following a recipe for a steak.
No, you don't.
Banseer and Kobe followed the recipe for craftsmanship. They got craftsmanship. They never sought wealth, so they never found it. But I can hear a skeptical listener pushing back on this, thinking, come on, if you build the absolute best product on the market, the money has to follow. The market rewards excellence.
Well, the market rewards leverage and capital allocation, not just excellence in isolated labor. This is the misconception that traps millions of people. They assume that if they are the absolute best at their specific job, wealth will naturally manifest as a side effect.
Like it just magically appears.
Exactly. It's treated as a byproduct. But wealth is a completely separate discipline.
It requires a completely different set of blueprints.
It does. If you optimize for being a great musician, you get great music. You get applause. You might even get a decent gig fee. But if you want wealth, you must optimize for wealth. Financial ignorance is often just a lack of focus.
Wow, lack of focus.
Yeah, Banseer and Kabi didn't fail at becoming wealthy. They simply never tried. They exerted their best endeavors toward their trades, and the universe let them be exactly that. Great tradesmen with empty pockets.
So if you want to be wealthy, you have to specifically make wealth building one of your deliberate goals. You have to study it as its own distinct subject, entirely separate from whatever your day job is. You can't just expect your 9-to-5 to magically graduate into a wealth-generating asset.
You have to step back and study the mechanics of money. How does it move? How does it multiply? How do you detach it from your physical labor?
Right.
Kabi points out that they need a new understanding. They need to seek honorable ways to accomplish this new desire.
Which means admitting you don't know anything about it.
Hmm.
And that leads to a massive ego check for our two guys. Because Kabi brings up a man named Arkad.
Ah, yes.
Arkad was a childhood peer of theirs. They went to the same priests to learn wisdom as youngsters. They played the same games. They were absolute equals. But now Arkad is famously the richest man in all of Babylon. He rides through the streets in a golden chariot.
Yet Kabi makes a point to note that Arkad is humble. He doesn't look over Kabi's head. He waves at him so everyone can see him pay greetings to the musician. Arkad isn't hoarding his status.
But still, imagine the swallowing of pride required here. Imagine going to your high school buddy, who is now a literal billionaire, riding around in a golden chariot, and admitting that after half a lifetime of breaking your back in the hot sun, you can't even rub 2 pennies together.
It's humbling.
You don't even have 2 shekels for a feast. Banseer is so frustrated, he even jokes that if he met Arkad in the dark, he might be tempted to steal his fat wallet.
The psychology of that joke is telling, though. Banseer still thinks of wealth as a static object, a fat wallet. But Kabi corrects him immediately. He says, nonsense. A man's wealth is not in the purse he carries. A fat purse quickly empties if there be no golden stream to refill it.
Right, the stream.
Yeah. Arkad has an income that constantly keeps his purse full no matter how liberally he spends.
A golden stream. Not a puddle, not a bucket. A stream.
Kabi understands something fundamental here. Arkad hasn't just accumulated a pile of money, he has built a system, an income stream. The structural difference between a lump sum and an income stream is the difference between temporary relief and permanent freedom.
That is so key.
Banseer's initial dream was about having a purse heavy with coins, but a heavy purse is finite. Every time you buy something, you move closer to zero. A stream implies a self-replenishing mechanism.
Banseer hears this and something clicks. He says, income. That is the thing. He realizes he wants an income that keeps flowing, whether he sits on the wall or travels to far lands. He finally grasps that his labor cannot be the only engine for his survival.
The natural question then becomes, well, how do you get the knowledge to build that stream? You have to go to the source. Bansir and Kabi make the decision to go to Arkad and ask him to teach them how to acquire incomes.
See, most people in that situation would ask for a loan. They would ask their billionaire friend for a handout or an investment in their chariot business.
Or they would let resentment take over and claim Arkad just got lucky or cheated the system.
Oh, for sure, the sour grapes response.
Exactly. Instead, they shift from passive envy to active inquiry. They are asking for education. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this shows that true financial turnaround begins when you stop asking for money and start asking for knowledge.
They seek financial wisdom from someone who has actually built wealth, not from theorists, not from their broke friends, but from a practitioner. They even decide to gather their other struggling boyhood friends and bring them along to share in the wisdom.
Yeah, the collective uplift.
There is no jealousy, just a shared realization that they have all been playing the wrong game.
They are leaving their ego at the door. They have accepted that their current operating system is flawed, and they are seeking the installation of a new one.
Let's pull all of these threads together into a unified takeaway. We started with Bansir paralyzed on a wall, completely defeated by the realization that his hard work wasn't enough. We've walked through the psychological toll of that, the realization that they optimized for the wrong thing, and finally, this moment of active empowerment where they decide to go learn the mechanics of wealth.
The soul of this chapter is that transition, is the move from being a passive victim, blaming the gods, feeling like a beast of burden, to an empowered learner. Bansir and Kabi realize that financial ignorance isn't a permanent character flaw. It isn't a curse from the heavens. It is simply an unstudied subject.
An unstudied subject. That phrasing strips all the shame away. The memorable insight here, the thing that really represents the core of this whole narrative is this. Skill in your profession brings you a paycheck, but skill in money brings you freedom.
Absolutely.
Bansir and Kabi represent the exact moment a person stops wishing for good luck and starts seeking the rules of the game.
They step off the treadmill of manual labor and finally look at the instruction manual for the machine itself. They recognize that trading time for money is a trap, and they are ready to learn how to build a stream.
So Bansir and Kabi are off to see the richest man in Babylon. They are gathering their friends, leaving their pride behind, and knocking on Arkad's door. But what exactly is Arkad going to tell them when they finally ask for his secret? How does a regular person, a chariot builder or a musician, actually build that golden stream from nothing? You won't want to miss our next deep dive as we explore Arkad's answer.
Before we go, ask yourself this. What is the one skill you've been spending all your time mastering, assuming it will eventually make you rich, when in reality, it might just be keeping you busy?
If you open up any modern personal finance book today, you are just immediately hit with a barrage, right? Like spreadsheets and compound interest calculators and, all these crazy tax optimization strategies.
It's overwhelming.
It really is. But if you step back from all the math and you just look at the real world, you see this paradox that those spreadsheets, they cannot fully explain.
Right.
Think about two people living in the exact same city.
Right, okay.
They work the exact same job, they pull the exact same salary, and they have, basically the exact same living expenses.
Sure.
But you fast forward 30 years.
Yeah.
And one of them is entirely financially secure, and the other is still completely strapped, just living paycheck to paycheck.
And we see that discrepancy constantly, like all the time.
All the time.
And we just assume it must be a product of luck.
Right, like they just got lucky.
Exactly. We write it off as fickle fate or a good roll of the dice. But today, we are pulling our insights from a completely different era to sort of dismantle that whole assumption. We are diving into chapter 3 of that classic book, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Such a good book.
It really is. And specifically, we're looking at the origin story of this character named Arkad.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the foundational laws of wealth. Laws that haven't changed in, thousands of years, honestly.
Because it's human nature.
Exactly, because Arkad's story proves that building wealth has absolutely nothing to do with fate.
Yeah.
It relies on a few very specific, completely learnable laws of nature, laws that govern exactly how capital is acquired, how it's retained, and how it's multiplied.
And Arkad's narrative is just the perfect vehicle for this, I think, because it strips away all of that modern financial jargon we were just talking about.
Right. No calculators needed.
Exactly. Like we aren't looking at algorithmic trading today or, real estate depreciation schedules.
Thank goodness.
Right. We were looking at the foundational psychology of wealth. but broken down into its purest, most mechanical form.
Which is so relevant.
It's incredibly relevant. I mean, for anyone trying to build a business or just trying to gain some agency over their own financial life.
Yeah, and the chapter actually starts right in the thick of that exact tension, the tension between fate and mechanics.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So Arkad is approached by his childhood friends.
Right.
And they are just deeply frustrated because, I mean, they played the same games as kids. They had the same teachers. They worked just as hard as he did.
So they're exactly like those two modern workers we mentioned earlier.
Exactly the same setup. Yet, in their adulthood, Arkad has become literally the richest man in Babylon.
Wow.
And they are struggling to survive, just scraping by.
Right.
And they literally blame fickle fate. They assume, the gods just smiled on Arkad and cursed them.
So that's the easiest excuse,
No.
right?
Oh, completely. It takes the responsibility right off their shoulders. So they are just hoping for a similar stroke of unearned luck to come save them.
Right.
But Arkad, he doesn't cuddle them at all.
No.
He bluntly tells them that they simply haven't learned the laws of wealth. Period. And then he goes a step further, which is super interesting. He argues that sudden, unearned wealth, which is exactly what they're wishing for.
Right, the lottery ticket.
Exactly. He says that kind of wealth is actually a curse.
And, the data on modern windfalls backs that up entirely.
Oh, totally.
Like when you look at the statistics on lottery winners or people who just inherit a massive sudden estate,
it's wild.
it is a shocking percentage of them end up completely bankrupt within a few years.
It's like 70% or something crazy.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
But Arkad's point isn't just about losing the money, right? It's about the psychological torture that comes with it.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right, because if you haven't built the internal capacity to generate wealth, if you haven't done the reps, being handed a giant pile of gold turns you into one of two things.
Okay, what are the two things?
Well, you either become a wanton spender, right? You blow through the capital, and you're left with this elevated lifestyle that you can no longer afford.
Ah, right. The classic lottery winner spending spree.
Exactly. Or the second option, you become a terrified miser.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you just hoard the money, and you live in constant anxiety because, deep down, you lack the skill set to replace that capital once it's gone.
So you're just guarding it constantly.
Constantly.
That makes total sense. I mean, the distinction there is really between having wealth and having the muscle to generate wealth.
Muscle, yes. I love that analogy.
Right, because if you only have the former, if you just have the money, the wealth actually becomes a burden.
Yeah.
You're constantly playing defense. So Arkad is basically telling his friends, look, you need to stop waiting for a lucky break.
Because it wouldn't even help them.
Exactly. Even if that windfall arrived tomorrow, they don't possess the operational muscle memory to retain it.
Right. So if we accept that wealth is a learnable skill, a muscle that you have to build through resistance and repetition,
Right.
the logical question is, where does someone with absolutely zero capital even begin?
Right, like where is the starting line?
Yeah, because Arkad didn't start with a trust fund.
Oh, definitely not.
Right. He started with a grueling job as a scribe. Like he was carving heavy clay tablets day in and day out.
Sounds awful.
It was exhausting manual labor. And the kicker is he had absolutely no money to show for it.
Right. He was surviving, but he was completely trapped in that cycle of subsistence.
Yeah.
So his breakout moment, his turning point, it comes through an encounter with this guy named Algamish. And Algamish is a very wealthy moneylender.
Right.
And he comes in and he demands a copy of the Ninth Law carved into clay by the very next day.
Which is, I'm assuming, a massive job.
A monumental task.
Hi.
Basically impossible for one person in that time frame.
Right.
But Arkad leverages this moment. He strikes a bargain.
Okay, what's the deal?
He offers to carve the entire law all through the night. But in exchange, Algamish has to teach him the secret to wealth.
Oh, wow. I love that. The hustle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he pushes himself to absolute physical exhaustion, carving by the light of a tiny wick lamp. But he gets it done. He completes the task.
Okay, so Algamish owes him the secret.
Right. And Algamish delivers. But the secret, it sounds deceptively simple.
Okay.
He just tells Arkad, a part of all you earn is yours to keep.
Wait. Okay, hold on. Keeping a part of what you earn.
Yeah.
Isn't that just, I don't know, a very ancient way of telling people to stick to a budget?
It sounds like it, right?
Yeah, like the idea of spending less than you earn, that's literally personal finance 101.
Right.
it feels a little bit underwhelming for the ultimate secret to wealth.
I get that. On the surface, the mechanism does just look like a budget.
Yeah.
But the psychological shift that Algamish is teaching here is so much deeper than just a spreadsheet.
Okay, unpack that for me.
It is about the difference between being a conduit and being an owner.
A conduit and an owner.
Right, because Algamish points out the ultimate irony of the working class.
Yeah.
He asks Arcad, he says, do you pay the garment maker? Do you pay the sandal maker? Do you pay the food merchant?
And Arcad says yes, obviously.
Right, of course he does. And the irony is that the worker gladly pays everyone else for their goods and services, but pays himself absolutely nothing.
Oh, wow.
Right? If you spend 100% of your earnings on your living expenses, you don't actually own your labor.
You're just a middleman.
Exactly. You are merely a conduit. You're a pipe moving money from your employer's hands straight into the hands of the merchants.
Okay, when you frame it like that, it completely changes the paradigm of saving.
Doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Because modern society is explicitly engineered to make us conduits.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like every subscription model, every targeted ad you see on Instagram,
Yeah.
every algorithmic feed, it's all designed to seamlessly transfer the value of your labor directly onto someone else's balance sheet.
You're just a pass-through entity for cash.
Exactly. And a budget, when we normally talk about budgeting, it often feels restrictive.
Yeah, it feels like a punishment.
Right, like you're putting yourself in this financial straitjacket just to appease some spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But paying yourself first, like extracting that 10% before anyone else gets a cut, it's actually an act of rebellion against that system.
Oh, I love that. A rebellion.
Yeah, it's an assertion that your labor actually belongs to you.
Exactly. It shifts you from being just this passive participant in the economy
Right.
to being an active owner of capital.
Yeah.
And Algamish tells Arcad that this first piece of copper that he saves, that is the seed from which his entire tree of wealth is going to grow.
The seed.
Right. So the practical application for us today is to treat yourself as your most demanding, most important creditor.
Right. Put yourself at the top of the invoice pile.
Exactly. Before a single bill is paid, before any discretionary spending happens, you physically separate that 10% and you make it completely untouchable.
Okay, so Arcad takes this concept of ownership to heart, right?
He does.
And he successfully saves his 10% for an entire year.
Which takes a lot of discipline.
A ton of discipline. So he's finally built up this small reservoir of capital.
Right.
But capital preservation is really only the first step.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where Arcad encounters his first major point of failure.
And it's a big one.
It's a huge mistake. He takes that entire year of savings, all that hard work, and he hands it over to a man named Asmur.
Okay, and who is Asmur?
Well, Asmur is a brickmaker by trade.
A brickmaker.
Yeah. And he just happens to be traveling across the sea to Tyre.
Right.
So Arcad gives him all his saved coins to buy rare Phoenician jewels.
Wait, he gives his money to a brickmaker to buy jewels.
Yes. The plan is, Asmur buys them cheap, brings them back, and they resell them at a massive markup back in Babylon.
I can already see where this is going.
Yeah, it's bad. So Algamish returns a year later, and he hears this plan.
Yeah.
And he is just incredulous. He asks Arcad this profound question. He says, would you go to the bread maker to inquire about the stars?
Oh, that is so good.
Right. It's so clear. And the outcome is, of course, entirely predictable.
Let me guess. He gets scammed.
Totally scammed. The Phoenicians are skilled merchants, and they easily scam the brickmaker by selling him basically worthless pieces of colored glass.
Oh, that's brutal.
Right. So Arcad's entire year of disciplined savings is just wiped out in a single transaction.
I mean, a brickmaker appraising rare jewels, it sounds completely absurd when we hear it in a historical context like that.
Right, we laugh at it.
Yeah, but honestly, this is a cognitive bias that we still fall victim to every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, it's a classic case of epistemic trespassing.
Epistemic trespassing. Break that down for the listeners.
So we constantly confuse proximity or friendliness or even success in one specific field with universal domain expertise. Like this is the modern equivalent of taking stock market tips from your dentist while you're getting a cavity filled.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. Or, dumping your life savings into a new crypto project just because some fitness influencer you follow on Instagram said it was a sure thing.
Right. Just because they have great abs doesn't mean they understand blockchain technology.
Exactly. But the halo effect convinces us that because someone is trustworthy or really competent in one area, that competence just magically transfers to an entirely unrelated area.
Right.
The medium changes, but human behavior remains identical.
It really does.
So Algamish's lesson here is this brutal reminder regarding capital allocation.
Yeah.
If you want advice on jewels, you have to go to a jeweler.
Right.
If you want advice on sheep, you go to a herdsman.
Makes sense.
You must aggressively vet the people you trust with your capital.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to ensure they have a proven daily track record of success in that specific domain. Otherwise, you are literally paying for their inexperience with your hard-earned savings.
Right. You're financing their education in a field they have no business being in.
Exactly.
Okay, so Arcad learns capital protection the hard way.
The very hard way.
Right. But to his credit, he doesn't quit.
No, he doesn't.
He starts over. He saves his 10% for another full year.
Wow. Good for him.
Yeah, and this time, he applies the lesson of domain expertise.
Okay, so who does he go to this time?
He takes his new capital, and he loans it to a man named Agar, who is a shield maker.
A shield maker. Okay, that sounds a bit more grounded.
Right, because Agar uses the funds to buy bronze for his actual business.
Ah, okay, so he's investing in the guy's actual trade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in return, Agar pays Arcad a rental fee, which is essentially just interest on the loan.
Right.
So Arcad has successfully moved from just preserving capital to actually multiplying it.
Yes. He found a productive asset, and he partnered with a verified expert.
He did.
So the math is finally working in his favor.
Finally.
But, and this is a big but,
Oh.
Arcad makes another huge psychological error.
Okay, what does he do?
He takes all of this new interest income, all that yield generated by the shield maker,
Yeah.
and he immediately spends it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He goes out and he buys himself massive feasts of honey, fine wine, spiced cake. He buys himself this fancy scarlet tunic.
He's living large.
He is. And Algamish returns, assesses the situation, and he delivers this incredibly vivid, haunting rebuke.
What does he say?
He tells Arcad, "You do eat the children of your savings."
Wow. You do eat the children of your savings.
Yeah.
That phrasing is incredible. And I mean, it perfectly captures the mechanism of compounding.
It really does. It paints such a picture.
Yeah, but, I could totally see the tension here for anyone trying to build wealth.
Oh, definitely.
Right, because if you are diligently saving your 10%, day in and day out,
Yeah.
and you finally make a smart investment that yields a profit,
You want a reward.
the natural human instinct is to reward yourself. Like, at what point do you actually get to enjoy the spiced cake?
Right. When is the payoff?
Exactly. And, the FIRE movement today,
Oh, yeah. Financial independence. Retire early.
right, they often run into this exact psychological wall.
Totally.
Because if the strategy requires just endless deprivation and you can never extract value from the portfolio, the whole process just becomes miserable.
Right. It's like, what are we even doing this for?
Exactly.
But Algamish isn't advocating for a life of monastic deprivation. He's really not.
Okay, so what is he saying then?
He's explaining the required sequence of compounding.
His sequence.
Right. By spending the yield immediately, Arcad is preventing those coins from going back to work to have children of their own.
Right. And eventually grandchildren.
Exactly. Algamish explains that you must first build what he calls an army of golden slaves.
An army.
Right. And you cannot execute the army before it conquers the territory.
Oh, that's such a good way to look at it.
The goal is to aggressively reinvest the yield. You have to keep reinvesting until the passive income stream becomes so vast, so powerful, that extracting value for a feast or a fancy tunic doesn't deplete the core principle at all.
Right. It doesn't even make a dent.
Exactly. First build the army, then you can enjoy the banquets without any regret.
So you have to build a self-sustaining ecosystem.
That's the perfect term for it, yeah.
Because wealth isn't just the principal you manage to scrape together from your salary.
Right.
No. True wealth is the compounding momentum of the money that your money makes.
Yes.
And if you consume the yield too early, you literally reset the compounding clock.
You go right back to zero momentum.
Yeah. You have to delay the gratification just long enough for the math to achieve escape velocity.
Escape velocity. I love that. And the timeline of that escape velocity brings up a really fascinating dynamic with Arcad's friends.
Okay, how so?
Well, after hearing this whole story, his friends assume Arcad possesses some sort of superhuman trait.
Right, like he's just built differently.
Exactly. They tell him that to lose everything in the first year with the brickmaker, then start over, and then deny himself the feasts when he finally made a profit.
Yeah, it sounds intense.
That they say that requires a level of willpower that they simply do not have.
They think it's a personality trait they're missing.
Exactly. But Arcad completely rejects their definition of willpower.
Completely. He actually dismantles their whole romanticized view of discipline.
Yeah, he does.
He says willpower is nonsense if you define it as having the strength to, quote, lift a burden a camel cannot carry.
Right.
Like if you think building wealth requires these heroic, agonizing feats of sacrifice and suffering, you are setting yourself up for failure.
Oh, 100%. It's not sustainable.
Right.
So Arcad defines willpower not as emotion or sacrifice.
Okay, what is it then?
He defines it as operational consistency.
Operational consistency.
Right. He says it's simply the unflinching purpose to complete a task you have set for yourself. And he uses this brilliant analogy to illustrate it.
The pebble analogy, right.
Yes. He says if he vows to throw a pebble into the river every single day for 100 days, and let's say on day 7, he just forgets.
Life happens.
Right. He doesn't just walk down on day 8, throw 2 pebbles in, and call it even.
Which is what most of us would do.
Exactly. We try to make up for it all at once.
Yeah.
But Arcad says no. He retraces his steps.
Wow.
He goes back and does the specific work required by the system he built.
It is the exact difference between goals and systems.
Yes.
Like, people often think willpower is, walking into a gym on January 1st.
Oh, the New Year's resolution crowd?
Right. And they try to bench press 300 pounds when they have literally never lifted weights before.
Yeah. And what happens? They get hurt or they quit by week 2.
Exactly. That is the burden the camel cannot carry, and it inevitably leads to a burnout.
Yeah.
But real willpower, like what Arcad is talking about, is the quiet, unsexy, boring commitment to wake up and just do 10 push-ups every single day.
Right.
Without breaking the chain.
Just don't break the chain.
Right. So Arcad is telling his friends to stop setting these impractical financial goals that require them to live in total misery.
Yeah.
And instead, set a manageable baseline, like saving 10%.
Just 10%.
And then execute it mechanically.
Mechanically, he removes all the emotion from wealth building.
Which is so freeing, really.
It is. But then as they're having this conversation, one of Arcad's friends poses a macroeconomic question that fundamentally challenges the entire premise.
Oh, right. The big pushback.
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. The friend asks, well, if all men followed these rules, if every single person saved their 10% and invested it perfectly, wouldn't the wealth eventually just run out?
No.
They are assuming there is simply not enough wealth in the world to go around.
Okay, that is the classic fixed pie fallacy.
Yes.
Right? It is this incredibly pervasive belief that the economy is a zero-sum game.
Exactly. That for me to win, you have to lose.
Right. If wealth is a finite resource, then me having a larger slice inherently means your slice must be smaller. But Arcad completely destroys this assumption.
He does. He explains exactly how wealth actually behaves when capital is deployed.
And he uses the example of the palace, right?
Yeah, the new palace. So he says, imagine a rich man building a massive new palace. The friend assumes that the gold paid by the rich man is now just gone, like it's hoarded away or disappeared.
Right, it left the rich man's pocket, so it's vanished.
But Arcad points out that the gold doesn't vanish. It transfers and it multiplies in utility.
Okay, how?
Well, the gold goes to the brickmaker, it goes to the laborer hauling the stones, it goes to the artist painting the frescoes.
Right, so it circulates.
It circulates. But more importantly, Arcad highlights this concept of secondary value creation.
Okay, this is the really cool part.
Yeah. So once the palace is built, the ground it stands on is suddenly worth more.
Because there's a palace on it.
Exactly. And the empty ground next to the palace, that is now worth more too.
Just by proximity.
Right. Simply because it is adjacent to this new development.
That's amazing.
Arcad is basically illustrating the velocity of money and the nature of positive sum games.
Yeah, because when capital circulates, it stimulates the economy. And it actually creates compounding value for everyone involved.
Right.
Like the economic pie is not fixed. It expands based on human ingenuity, labor, and the actual deployment of capital.
Which is a huge mental shift.
Huge. It completely shifts the paradigm from a scarcity mindset where you view wealth as this finite thing to be hoarded and protected from others.
Right, the miserable miser we talked about.
Exactly. It shifts you from that to an abundance mindset. You realize that your financial success does not require someone else's failure.
And that's so important for entrepreneurs to internalize.
Totally. Because when you exert energy to create value, you were actually expanding the total available wealth of the entire system.
Which is honestly the core synthesis of Arkad's entire transformation.
Yeah,
His journey from an exhausted, broke scribe to the wealthiest man in Babylon, it wasn't magic,
no,
and it wasn't fate.
definitely not.
It was the profound realization of agency. He recognized that the mechanisms of wealth are completely indifferent to who uses them.
They're just laws, like gravity.
Exactly. They just work.
So it is just a deliberate sequence of mechanical actions.
Yeah.
Let's review them. You claim your 10% to transition from a conduit to an owner.
Step 1.
Right. Then step 2, you protect that capital from the epistemic trespassing of amateurs, and you only trust proven experts in their specific domains.
Crucial step.
Then step 3, you force that capital to multiply by relentlessly reinvesting the yield, right? Allowing that compounding to just do the heavy lifting for you.
Build the army of golden slaves.
Exactly. And finally, you execute this entire sequence with boring, unflinching, operational consistency.
Right. You throw the pebble every single day.
Every single day.
And you do all of this while operating under the macroeconomic truth that you are adding value to an expanding world rather than just extracting from a shrinking one.
Right. Which gives the whole process meaning.
Yeah, it really does.
It provides just a complete bulletproof blueprint for the individual.
It's perfect.
But, you know, the chapter actually leaves us with this fascinating forward-looking dilemma.
Yeah, it zooms way out at the end.
Right. Because we have just examined how one man mastered these laws to save himself from poverty.
Arkad figured it out.
He figured it out. But what happens to an entire empire when the king realizes that almost all the gold has ceased flowing through the markets and is basically locked in the hands of a few wealthy men who actually understand these laws?
It's a massive systemic problem.
It is. Like, how do you scale this knowledge?
Yeah.
How do you teach these fundamental laws of wealth to an entire starving city to prevent total economic collapse?
It's one thing to teach yourself, it's another to teach millions.
Exactly. And we are going to explore that massive logistical and economic challenge in our next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.